Hey peeps, Amma here. If you are new, welcome to the channel. On this channel, we engage in thought-provoking conversations for unity and change. If you'd like to be part of this movement for change, hit the subscribe button and turn on your post notifications so that you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video. We are living in a highly dynamic world where the way of living and doing business has changed. Africa is still lagging behind in terms of industrialization and governance compared to other regions such as America and Europe. With me today in studio is Evidence James, who is a master's student in law at the University of Cape Town. He's also a Mastercard scholar as well as an author. Thank you so much, James, for joining me in studio once again.
Thank you very much, Amma, for having me. It's a pleasure.
Last time when you were in studio, we spoke about tribalism and toxic tribalism.
Yes, yes.
And I must say that was very, very insightful.
Yes.
Today we'll be talking about youth in politics and governance. So, for a start, we live in a globalized world where Africa is expected to participate as an equal partner. Do you think youth can be an asset, or youth is an asset in helping Africa to catch up with the rest of the world?
Thank you, Amma. Yes, certainly I enjoyed the previous conversation on tribalism and toxic tribalism. I think there's quite more to unpack there. I think we can always do it, when we have time. Yes, coming to your question, certainly I do agree with you that Africa is still lagging behind with most of its economy driven by agriculture, mining, resource extraction, and certainly young people are an asset. The UN Youth Envoy, in 2013, Ahmad, reiterated, emphasized the exact point that you're asking, that Africa's greatest asset is its youth, right? And in a report of the UN Economic Commission in 2016, they pointed out that young people in Africa, they constitute the greatest, portion of the population at 60%. So that is from 0 to 24 ages. And we cannot talk about Africa without talking about that age. So Africa is young, and the future of Africa depends on these people. Yes.
James, you indicated earlier on that youth plays an important role in terms of helping Africa catch up with the rest of the world as far as industrialization and governance are concerned. So I would like to know from you, what is your assessment of the participation of youth in Africa in terms of governance and politics?
Thank you, Amma. Looking at Africa, there have been a number of studies that have been conducted on youth participation in governance and politics in Africa, of course in other countries. These studies, of course, when one are looking at them, they must keep, a careful eye, because sometimes it does not give a very realistic picture. It's based on a sample. Afrobarometer, they conducted a research focusing on the 2014 and 15 years, looking at the participation of youth, in politics. And they looked at 18 to 35 range, 18 to 35 year olds, and they were looking at their participation in things like attending a protest, attending a public meeting, voting, and in all of those things, they found that young people have the lowest levels of participation in those areas compared to the older people. And what's even more concerning is that of those young people, females were found to have a lower rate of participation compared to the guys.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's just in Africa.
Yes, that's Africa.
I suppose, given that you are Zimbabwean,
Yeah.
and that we are in South Africa,
Yeah.
and given that you have also been in South Africa
Yeah.
for some time.
6 years now.
Yeah. So you are in a position to give us the participation of youth in politics and governance in these countries.
Yeah.
So what is your assessment in this regard?
Okay, thank you. I want to start with the Zim. Right, with the Zim. I do not have, statistics like numbers, right? But I can give you a general, outlook on youth participation in governance and politics. If you look at our parliament, you don't see as much young people there. The ruling party hasn't been, doing good in terms of empowering and including young people. The opposition, the MDC, has been trying to bring in new blood, because mainly it's composed of, the younger generation. Yes, so we have a few of those who are under 35. Yes, that is what I can say, with regards to Zim. So the picture is not looking good. We need more young people to participate in politics and governance in Zim. And coming to South Africa, so there have been several studies that have been conducted on youth participation in governance and politics in South Africa, and they show different, pictures. For example, a study by the Institute of Security Studies shows that South African youth are highly engaged in politics, right? As much as they are a bit skeptical as to whether the system is serving them well. Another study that was conducted just after the 2019 elections, focusing on youth participation in politics and governance, it also showed that young people in South Africa, they are not participating in politics as would be expected. So in a way, it conflicts with the previous research done by Institute of Security Studies. But I can say in my assessment, from what I've seen, there is so much energy on the ground. So you can see, I think the EFF has re-energized, the ground, and you're seeing a lot of young people, going with the fighters in a way. It seems EFF is appealing, to young people, and also the DA seems to be opening up to to young people. And so I think if we can look at statistics, so the parliamentary, the PMG, the Parliamentary Monitoring Group, they conducted a study. They're looking at the 2018 Parliament, looking at the composition of young people in Parliament, per political party, and their findings were that in ANC there were only 2 young people who were under 35, and in total, looking at all political parties, young people who are under 35 were only 6% of the parliament, which is not good, right? Which is not good. The DA has the biggest number of you know, young people as MPs, with EFF, you know, outperforming both the ANC and the DA in terms of proportion, right? So if you look at that 6%, it's not good. And so if we are looking at that participation from that angle, the participation is very, very low. Of course, there will be other reasons that we can delve into later on why it is that. But if in terms of just painting a picture, 6% is not good. So that is, you know, substance. If we look at substance in terms of participation, if we look at energy, the energy is there, right? The energy is there, but when it comes to representation in parliament, the numbers just go down, I guess.
Why do you think is causing low participation of youth in politics and governments in these countries that you've just mentioned, that is in South Africa and in Zim and probably in Africa in general?
Okay, thank you. There are many causes, right? There are many causes of you know, low participation of youth in politics and governance, and some of them probably are financial. You know, I think the biggest, which is the most problematic one, is youth disempowerment. Right? Let me unpack this. So there are many ways through which youth are being disempowered to participate in politics and governance. One of those is political recycling, right? Yeah. So there's I think that is the best way of saying it, of putting it. So there's a lot of recycling of old, you know, leaders. So whenever there's a cabinet reshuffle, or you know, whether is it a by-election, chances are you getting another person, you know, from the same team. So it's basically people who are moving from this position and move to another position without giving space and room for young people to come in. Right? You see a deputy minister is way old, and you would have thought a deputy minister should be someone who is younger, who should learn from the senior person who will be a minister then, such that later on this person can, you know, be upgraded and fill up, you know, the position of a minister. But that's not the case. Yes. So that is one which is problematic and that we need to deal with. Another one is violence. So this has been more pronounced in Zim, where immediately when a young person voices out a concern, they find themselves arrested, they get beaten up by police, and in certain instances you would have you know, ladies, young ladies, guys, they just take you know, a banner, write something, walk in the street protesting, like a one person protesting, and they get arrested. There is no banning of anything. They haven't disturbed you know, the flow of traffic, and yet the Constitution of Zimbabwe, Section 59, it empowers, it gives that right for citizens to protest, to even conduct a one-man march, and yet they get arrested. And you see, some of the things which would have been said, they relate to corruption, right? And yet the leaders, they feel threatened, and they would want to, you know, to stifle and silence, you know, these young people, such that immediately when a young person wants to say something, they'll think, I can get arrested, you know. So there is that. It's being used as a tool to disempower, you know, young people. Another is there's patronization, if I can put it that way, you know, of young people by the elders, the senior leaders, where young people are constantly reminded that they are born free, that they are inexperienced, that they are gullible and vulnerable to manipulation by colonial countries, such that in a way there is a discounting of the constitutional status that was bestowed on every citizen who is above the age of 18, right? So the Constitution of South Africa is very, very clear, right? And I mean, it says that every adult person has the right to vote. Adult citizen has the right to vote. And the Children's Act is very clear on who is an adult, right? So everyone who is above the age of 18 is an adult. The law regards a person who is above the age of 18 as an adult because that person has got the capacity to think. And the Constitution gives them a right and an obligation to shape the direction of the country. So at 18 years old, an individual has got sufficient capacity. The law has deemed it as such. That this person is enough, is mature enough to put a vote and elect the leader for the country and to shape the direction of the country. But now they're constantly being reminded that, hey, you're young, you are this. You know, it might be funny, I can tell you this. At one time, that was in 2018, you know, towards the the elections in Zim, one of the war veterans, he was caught on camera calling or labeling Nelson Chamisa, who is the president of the MDC Alliance, as a toddler. And by then he was over 40 years old. He says a toddler. How can you call someone who is 40 years old a toddler? So there's that discounting. Immediately when one is labeled a toddler, that means whatever they're gonna say, it must be disregarded because they're inexperienced.
Okay, so you have mentioned that one of the main reasons why there is low participation of youth in governance and politics is because of the disempowerment of youth.
Yeah.
But then wouldn't one argue that maybe youth are just not interested in taking part in politics? I mean, what can you share with us to show that it's not really because youth are not interested in politics, but it's really because there's just disempowerment of youth?
Yeah. No, certainly. I mean, if you look at what's happening, if you look at the energy on the ground, I'm sure you can agree with me that the fees must fall. It gave us a totally different picture of the the energy and the eagerness of young people to take part in issues that affect society, and of course issues that also affected them. We have seen in many universities where students were protesting, marching for the betterment of they were marching for universities to employ your cleaners, your security and all that, because they were being outsourced in a way. Yes. So students, they fought, they marched as if they were fighting for their own education, and yet they were fighting for the rights of other members of the society. And so there is that energy is there. You can see there's that energy. You can see students marching, against gender-based violence. And it's not only affecting students, but affecting members of the community, right? So students are ready. They are willing, right? Young people are ready. They are willing to take part in politics. You can see. Right?
The activism is
the activism is there, right? And that activism is not translating to actual political representation when it comes to platforms like your parliament, and probably the cabinet. or in the executive, I can tell you in Zim, as much as the government continues to attempt to silence young people, but you can see that young people are not, discouraged by those arrests and all that. So we now have got cases of young people who are, who continue to say things, who continue to voice their opinions. They get arrested, regardless of having seen someone else getting arrested, for saying probably the same thing, and someone also come. So it's a situation that cannot be. Young people cannot be silenced. That's the thing, and that energy is there. So if you see this low participation, I do not think it's a result of that young people, they just don't want to participate. Because the situation would be different if the spaces were open for them to participate. Yes, we have got cases of certain young people who do not want to participate, right? I think that also applies even with adults. There are certain adults who just say, politics, has got nothing to do with me, and yet politics has got everything to do with them. It actually chooses them. So yes, the young people are willing to take part in politics and governance, and they're just waiting for the opportunity, for the spaces to open up.
Given the assessment that you've made on the participation of youth in governance and politics, what value do you think youth bring in governance and politics, and why should the participation of youth be encouraged in politics and governance? And also, I would like to know, what do you think can be done to promote the participation of youth in governance and politics?
All right. No, thank you. Thank you for those questions. I think yes, certainly. It's very, very important that young people participate in politics, because young people have got so much more to offer. In terms of assisting Africa and helping Africa to catch up with the rest of the world. And modernizing Africa and all that. Coming to the reasons why, rather start with the reason why young people must be encouraged to participate. The first of those is probably the closest one, is that the constitution of the country and the relevant legislation here in South Africa, they give a right to every adult citizen. That means anyone from the age of 18 and above, right? And that right, if you look it from another perspective, it is an obligation, right? Everyone, after a certain time, South Africans, they come together and vote to determine the direction of the country, who is going to be leading the country. And through those people, South Africans will speak into the budget of the country, resource allocation, what goes where and who does what, right? So by encouraging young people to participate, in other words, we are restating, re-emphasizing, empowering them to take on the constitutional obligation that has been given to them through the right to vote. Right. So that is probably one of the biggest reasons why young people must participate. Because by not participating, they're surrendering themselves to fate. It's more like a bird that is being thrown, across the sky by the wind, whereas it has got wings to fly, and it cannot blame anyone. If they find, young people cannot blame anyone when they find themselves, in an undesirable place where they had a chance through the vote to say, to say out and point the direction of the country. Another reason, if we can look probably at the value, right, that young people bring forward in politics and governance. Young people, like the millennials now, they are more educated than their grandparents. So the researches, they show that.
True.
That young people, in terms of content and in terms of the numbers of young people who are educated, there are more educated young people now than they were if you look at their grandparents and probably their parents.
True.
Right? So Africa needs to tap into this into this treasure, to develop, modernize, and industrialize, right? And so it comes with innovation. I can just point to just a few cases. If you look at some of recently self-made billionaires, like Zuckerberg, he became a billionaire at 23, and his co-founders. You look at Snapchat. Those guys become billionaires, self-made billionaires. At the age of 28, before 30. So you can look up at a number of young people who are doing amazing things, due to the talent which they have and the exposure which they have, the interchange of the exchange of ideas, which is happening in the kind of era that we are living, this globalized era, where many people are changing ideas. So certainly young people can drive, Africa's development. Another value which young people can bring, if promoted, to participate more and more in politics, is that young people are more liberal than their older counterparts, right? In terms of racism and tribalism. Yes. So by having more young people in politics, you'd be surprised that you'd see more political tolerance. You have more political tolerance because young people all over the country, in universities, they study across the world. They have met. I think they're exposed, to a lot of nationalities, tribes, cultures, to the extent that they've got a different way of looking at the world, which I think is very, very important, considering that South Africa, is struggling, with racism, and probably to a certain extent, there's some tribalism, toxic tribalism rather. Yes, so I think young people can also bring that, which is very, very important. So probably coming to your last question, which is what can be done to promote increased participation by young people in politics and governance. The first thing, to deal with the point that I've raised earlier on political recycling, there must be strict adherence to the age limit, right, of government officials. And if needs be, that age limit must be reviewed down, so that we have, seniors leaving the benches quite earlier, and leaving room for new blood to come in, be groomed, and take over the stick. I mean, this is more like relay, it's marathon relay, where the older generations have to pass the battle stick, right? They have to pass down the stick to the younger generation. It goes like that. Now, currently what is happening is that we've got this one person who's holding the stick, and they want to run the entire race, and they get exhausted, and there's no one else to take the paddle stick forward. It's part of human nature that people die, and we don't want the knowledge which seniors have to die with them. It must be passed down. Another issue we really need to promote, there's need to promote the respect of human rights, right? Adherence to the rule of law and constitutionalism. That way, the right to be heard, the right to protest can be respected. And we can have fewer and fewer instances where young people are being intimidated for speaking out, right? So just by respecting the constitutionally enshrined fundamental rights, that can go a long way in encouraging or creating a very conducive and safe space for young people to participate in politics. Another thing is education. In education, there's something that needs to be done.
What do you mean by education? You mean from primary school, high school?
Yeah.
What do you mean by education?
So I think from about high school, right? Young people must be conscientized of the constitutional obligation that is covered in the constitutional right to vote. That is national duty, right? That is national duty. It's like paying taxes, right? It seems there's so much publicity about the obligation to pay taxes, and yet the right to vote does not receive so much attention, and yet these two cannot be separated.
True.
Imagine government, IEC, promoting the right to vote the way SARS promote and audits, compliance on taxes. So you can imagine what kind of democracy would have. That means young people will take part, So there's no excuse that you're young, so you're not gonna pay tax. So immediately they'll be telling you you need to pay tax.
Yeah.
So in the same way, you must be told you have the right to vote, and there is a responsibility with you, and you need to discharge that responsibility. So from high school up to university, the right to vote must be emphasized, and young people must be made to understand that this right, it was not given for luxury, right? That's why even you look at the liberation struggle, it was centered around the right to vote. It's not just there for fashion or decoration. That means you're a citizen. And that is the way you can express your citizenship and your existence, I actually feel like the right to vote goes together with your birth certificate and your ID. That's how important it is. Without the right to vote, you're not a human being. As much as you are not a human being if you don't have your ID. So at times you see there's a confusion that it feels like for one to take part in politics, they must associate with a particular political party. I don't think that is the case, right? I can go and vote ANC, even though you never see me wearing an ANC t-shirt, right? So there's one thing to be active in politics, right? And it's another to be voting. So I might not be participating in anything, but on the day of voting, I go out there, I go and vote, I come back. That's it. And I would have played my part, my national duty, yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. Wow. That was thought-provoking, I must say.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, James, for creating the time to share your views on this issue. And I'm looking forward to having you again soon in studio for more conversations such as this.
No, it's a pleasure. I also, I'm looking forward to more conversations in this series, and to speak more and share more, because you also get to learn.
Yeah, absolutely.
The more when you look at these issues, you realize that there's so much that we haven't been doing that we are supposed to be doing, as young people.
Yeah.
To take, center stage as partners.
Yeah.
In developing our countries and communities.
And
so thank you very much for providing that platform.
Yeah.
It's really neat.
And we have the power, right?
Yes.
As young people.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's just a matter of being aware of
what is it that we have. It seems we've got wings, but we're not flying.
We have to fly.
It's more like a free fall now, which is not really helping us, because we have got other people who are solving our problems in our absence. In a way, we can't expect to have perfect solutions for that. Yes. So thank you very much.
If you have any thoughts about today's topic, please leave them in the comment section below. And if you have enjoyed today's conversation, please remember to give this video a big thumbs up. Until we meet again next week Saturday, take care and bye.